Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Today is a very special day, and it's all thanks to you. We've officially hit 100 subscribers. Can you believe it? I mean, I know 100 might not seem like a huge number to some, but to me, it's absolutely incredible. Every single one of you has helped bring this channel to life. Whether you've been here since the very beginning or just joined us recently, your support means everything. Thank you. I'll definitely be releasing a 100 sub special very soon, so stay tuned. But that's enough talk for now. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. College is supposed to be the time of your life, right? At least, that's what the brochures promise. The late-night study sessions, the parties with new friends, the freedom to finally step out of your childhood shell and become someone new. But no one warned me how quickly reality would hit. The constant pressure to balance grades, a part-time job, and the mounting student debt. Sometimes it felt like I was drowning. By the end of my second semester, I was running on empty. My bank account had shriveled up after paying for textbooks, groceries, and the absurd price of living in a cramped apartment downtown. The library job I had barely covered rent, let alone the 1,000 other things I needed to pay for. But I had no choice. That was when I started looking for something else. Something to get me through. I wanted to stay focused on my studies, but I was so tired of being broke. I needed something that would give me the flexibility to work around my classes, something that paid well enough to give me some breathing room. I'd spent countless hours browsing job boards, online tutoring positions, remote call center work, writing gigs. Everything required more time than I had, and the pay was always less than what I needed. It was late one night when I stumbled across a thread titled "Easy Money, No Experience Required" on a student forum. I almost passed it up. The title screamed too good to be true, but then I read the comment below it. It's legit. I've been doing it for months. You get paid well, and it's all remote. My heart skipped. I opened the link. The website looked outdated and sketchy, with black backgrounds and red text. It had the look of something that belonged in 2003, but the promise of easy money was enough to keep me hooked. It wasn't the job descriptions I'd seen before. No retail, no tedious surveys. Just a simple offer. Looking for moderators for private streaming platform. High pay, flexible hours, no experience required. Strong stomach recommended. I should have closed the tab right then and there. My gut told me something was off. I should have trusted it. But instead, I scrolled further, and at the bottom, I saw the pay. $500 per day. That number stuck with me. I hadn't made that much in a month working at the library. I could pay off all my bills in a week. My mind raced. What did I have to lose? I was already behind on rent, and I'd been struggling to make ends meet. What if this was the solution? I clicked the link. The form was simple. Name, email, age, and a checkbox confirming that I was over 18. I hesitated for a second. The whole thing felt off, like I was crossing a line. But the thought of financial freedom, the relief of not worrying about bills, pushed me forward. Within minutes, I submitted the form. The email came an hour later. Subject: Welcome to the team. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me, but I couldn't stop reading. The instructions were clear. Log in the following night at 10 p.m., no questions, no contact with other members of the team, just show up, do your job, and get paid. My fingers trembled as I clicked off my laptop. I sat in silence for a long while, the email still open on my screen. What had I just signed up for? I didn't know it then, but I was about to enter a world I could never fully escape from. I don't know what I was expecting when I logged in that night, but it wasn't this. The website was a dark, minimalist space with a series of video streams lined up across the screen. Each one had a timestamp next to it, like some kind of live event. But there were no faces, just shadows, sounds, and images flickering across the screen. The instructions were simple. Monitor and log the video streams. Report any unusual activity. I took a deep breath and clicked on the first video. The screen flickered. Then a grainy image of a small room appeared. It looked like a basement with dim lighting and a single rickety chair. A man sat in the chair, his face covered by a black cloth. There were ropes around his wrists and ankles, securing him to the chair. The camera was angled just enough to show the man's slumped posture, but not enough to reveal who he was. I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was like watching something I shouldn't, something so wrong that it made my stomach churn. I immediately felt a wave of guilt, but I forced myself to keep watching. A timer in the corner of the screen ticked down. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. 2 figures walked in, both wearing masks. They approached the man in the chair, and without a word, one of them raised a crowbar. The sound of metal hitting flesh echoed through my headphones, sending a shock of cold terror through my body. I recoiled, but I knew I had to keep watching. I couldn't look away. I glanced at the screen where I was supposed to report activity. My hands shook as I typed in the box. Man tied to chair. 2 masked individuals. Possibly a kidnapping or interrogation. That was all I could manage. I clicked submit and sat back, my head spinning. What the hell was going on here? This wasn't what I signed up for. And yet, I stayed. The clock on the video counted down, and I knew I had to stay until the end of the assignment. The next hour felt like an eternity. After that first night, I was in too deep. I couldn't back out. The money was too good, and the people who hired me were too powerful. I'd already submitted my first report, and I'd been paid instantly. But the images from that video haunted me. I couldn't stop replaying the moment the crowbar hit the man's body, the sickening sound ringing in my ears. The next few days passed in a blur. I kept logging in every night, watching streams, typing reports. Some were brutal, others mundane. Some days, the streams felt like they were showing random fights or pranks gone wrong. Other nights, the violence was so real, so raw, that I could feel it in my gut. The messages from Mr. Black were always terse, always to the point. Keep your focus, watch everything, report anything unusual. It wasn't until the 4th day that I understood what was really happening. One of the streams I was monitoring featured a man tied to a chair, again. But this time he was talking. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. He was begging, pleading for his life. I felt sick to my stomach as I typed the usual report. But then something strange happened. The man spoke directly to the camera, addressing me. "You don't know me," he said, his voice raspy. "But you're the one who's watching me, aren't you? You're the one who gets to decide whether I live or die." I froze, my hands hovering over the keyboard. This wasn't part of the deal. I wasn't supposed to interact with them. The camera shook as the man struggled in the chair. "Please," he gasped. "Don't let them do this." I couldn't move. My heart raced. What the hell was going on? A notification popped up on the screen. "Keep watching. Report all actions." I clicked the submit button, my eyes locked on the man's face. I felt my breath catch in my throat, like something was suffocating me. I didn't know what to think anymore. Was this all a sick game? Or was I actually involved in something worse than I could ever imagine? And the worst part, I didn't know if I could ever stop. The next few nights were a blur. I couldn't shake the image of the man's pleading face. The way he had looked directly at me, begging me to stop watching, to save him. I told myself that it wasn't my fault. I wasn't the one holding the crowbar, wasn't the one behind the camera. I was just there, like a ghost, lurking in the background. But the guilt gnawed at me. The work kept coming, more streams, more violence, more dehumanizing moments. Each one felt worse than the last. There were times when I would have to mute the video because I couldn't bear to hear the screams. But I had a job to do. I couldn't back out now. And yet, every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man. His eyes, wide and desperate. That was when I started to dig deeper. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe I thought that if I understood what was really going on, it would make it easier to accept. So I started browsing the forums, the deeper, darker corners of the internet. That's where I found the threads, the ones talking about the dark web and the mysterious people who ran these streams. They called themselves the Watchers. They were everywhere, hidden behind layers of encryption and secrecy. Some of them posted about the work they did, bragging about the kinds of violence they orchestrated. Others seemed almost philosophical. They spoke of watching as a way of witnessing truth. To them, the world was a game, and people were just pawns. I couldn't look away. The more I read, the more I felt trapped. There was no easy way out. I wasn't sure if the Watchers were controlling things behind the scenes, but there was no way I was the only one doing this. And that's when I realized I wasn't just watching these people die. I was enabling it. I hadn't seen the man from the chair again. At least, not directly. The streams had become more varied, more frequent. Some nights the violence was restrained, and others, it was merciless. The sounds of suffering filled my ears, and no matter how hard I tried to block them out, they lingered, echoing in the back of my mind. But that night it was different. It started with a message. "The next stream is yours." I froze. My hands trembled as I clicked the link. The page loaded, but this time it wasn't like the others. The video feed was blurred, disjointed, as if it was being hacked or interfered with. There were no sounds at first, just a dark room and a single figure sitting at a desk. It wasn't until the figure turned that I saw who it was. It was him, the man from the chair. I stared at him wide-eyed as he looked directly into the camera, his eyes now frantic with terror. He was different now, no longer tied to the chair, but his hands were shaking as he typed furiously on a keyboard, sweat dripping down his face. "Do not watch this," he said, his voice cracking. "Get out of here. Turn it off before it's too late." I didn't move. I couldn't. A countdown began at the top of the screen, ticking down to 0. As it hit the final seconds, I saw the man's face twist in fear. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. The camera shook wildly, and for a brief moment, I thought the feed had cut out. But then, through the static, I saw something I'll never forget. A figure, masked, emerged from the shadows. It was the same figure who had been in the first video. The man screamed, begging for mercy. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was frozen. My heart raced, and I typed the report. The man from earlier. He's trying to escape. 2 masked figures. Possible abduction or execution. I hit submit, but nothing changed. The feed kept running, and then the video cut out completely. I sat there, staring at the blank screen. My mind was reeling. Was that the end of the man? Or was he still alive somewhere out there? What had just happened? I felt a deep chill run through my bones. I had to quit this job. I had to get away from this. But something told me it wasn't that easy. I should have quit. I should have just shut down my computer and walked away. But it wasn't that simple. The money was too good, and I'd come too far. There were too many unanswered questions. The next day, I received another email from Mr. Black. The message was brief, cryptic. You're doing good work. But remember, no questions. We don't want to see you fail. I couldn't ignore it. The words lingered in my mind, like a threat I couldn't escape. I hadn't said anything, hadn't asked about the man or the masked figures. I hadn't even mentioned the disturbing video feed. But Mr. Black knew. I couldn't help but wonder if he'd been watching me, waiting for me to slip up. That night I logged in, my heart hammering in my chest. I was shaking. The guilt, the anxiety, it was all building up. My eyes darted over the streams as if something were going to happen. But nothing felt safe anymore. That's when I noticed something strange in the corner of the screen. A new message. We see you. I clicked it immediately. There was no sender, no name, just a link. My instincts screamed at me not to click, but I couldn't stop myself. The link led to another stream. This time there was no video feed, just a black screen. But I could hear something. Footsteps. They were getting closer. I spun around in my chair, expecting someone to be behind me, but no one was there. The footsteps continued in the headphones, growing louder, closer. I felt something cold slide down my spine. And then, the message popped up again. We're coming for you. I froze. My heart stopped. And I realized, no matter how far I ran, no matter how much I wanted to quit, there was no escaping this job. It was already too late. It wasn't just the emails. It wasn't just the messages or the unsettling feeling in the air. That night, as I sat in front of the screen, a notification popped up. Something different, more ominous. I clicked it instinctively, and a video began to load. This time, there was no crowd, no audience watching in silence. It was just me, staring at the screen as the image slowly came into focus. It was a room, dimly lit, almost empty. But there, in the center of it all, sat the man from the chair. His hands were bound. He was no longer pleading, no longer begging. He simply stared, his face resigned. I couldn't watch this. My stomach twisted. The guilt, the anger, It boiled up in me like a storm. I had become a part of this. I had been complicit, watching these people suffer for nothing but a paycheck. My phone buzzed. A text message from Mr. Black. Time for your final test. Don't fail us. I was done. I couldn't take it anymore. I shut the laptop. The whole world felt like it was closing in. I knew what I had to do, but I couldn't do it alone. The whole thing was too big, too dangerous. Mr. Black's reach was endless. There was no way I could simply quit without consequences. That's when I reached out to someone. I had one contact, an old friend from college. His name was Adam, and he had always been the more tech-savvy one between us. I sent him a quick message. I need help. Can you get me out of this? His reply was quick. Meet me. We need to talk. I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag, wiped my hard drive clean, and walked out the door. I met Adam at a small, nondescript cafe downtown. As soon as I sat down, he looked at me, his expression grim. "Who's after you?" he asked. I told him everything. I didn't hold back. I recounted my first night on the job, the initial thrill, and then the slow descent into horror. How I watched people die, how I started to question everything about what I was doing. I told him about Mr. Black, the threats, the messages. Adam listened silently, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "You're being tracked," he said. "They've been watching you. It's not just a job for them. It's something bigger. You can't just walk away from that kind of thing." "Then what do I do?" I asked. I could feel the panic rising in my chest again. I had no answers, no way out. "You cut all ties," Adam said. "I'll help you. I can wipe your digital footprint, change your identity. You'll have to disappear. It's the only way." We spent the next few hours discussing the details. Adam helped me wipe my devices, delete accounts, change every form of identification I had. My social media profiles, my email addresses, everything had to go. And once it was gone, we made plans for me to disappear. Adam arranged a new identity for me, and I promised I would never contact him again. I knew I couldn't afford to have any loose ends. Before I left, he looked at me with a serious expression. "Don't go back to this life. Stay hidden. They will come after you, but they can't find you if you're smart." I nodded, but deep down, a knot of fear tightened in my chest. What if they did find me? It wasn't easy adjusting to my new life. I moved to a different city, took on a low-key job that didn't require much contact with others. I kept to myself, doing everything I could to stay off the grid. I deleted my social media accounts, changed my number. I had no choice but to live like a ghost. But no matter how many precautions I took, the anxiety didn't fade. I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder. Every time I received a call or an email, I felt a cold chill race through my body. Was it Mr. Black? Was it someone else from the dark web? The worst part? The messages still came. They were less frequent, less personal, but they kept coming. Every so often, I'd see a notification pop up on my phone. "We know where you are." It would vanish as quickly as it came, but the words hung in the air, the weight of them suffocating me. Months passed, and the constant dread became my reality. I had escaped, but I was never truly free. The job had left its mark on me. It wasn't just the people I had watched die. It was the knowledge that I was part of something darker, something that would always be just a few steps behind me. I tried to bury it. I tried to pretend like it didn't matter, like I was just another person trying to survive. But the truth was, I knew the dark web hadn't let me go. It was just waiting for the right moment. I'd never stop looking over my shoulder. And deep down, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't free. Not yet.